As the coronavirus ravages the globe, the way to fight this invisible enemy is clear.
Stay home.
Stay at home.
Staying at home.
And while some of us are staying home with our partners and families, for many, social distancing measures have left us feeling very much alone. So how can we combat loneliness in the age of isolation?
I hate that my connection is just like shitty sometimes. I don't enjoy that. Can you see me? Here we go.
There we are.
Okay.
This is my friend and colleague Noah Michaelson, editor of HuffPost Personal. Like me, Noah lives by himself in an apartment in Brooklyn. I reached out to him to see how he was doing.
So it's almost been, I guess, 2.5 weeks now. And I think a lot of people thought like this was going to actually be kind of fun.
But a few weeks in, and well,
it's not great anymore. Just being stuck by yourself in the four walls of your apartment and not having any way to like physically see or touch someone except for the people I see on the street when I'm taking a walk. That's starting to take a toll on me, for sure.
I also reached out to check in on my friend and colleague Jamie Feldman, reporter for HuffPost Life and HuffPost Personal. Jamie also lives by herself in Brooklyn.
How are you feeling?
I feel like that question might make me cry.
What Noah, Jamie, and myself are feeling is loneliness.
I think that especially if we're talking about being lonely and being isolated can just send you into a panic spiral. Like the thought of not touching anyone or seeing any of my loved ones for the foreseeable future for an amount of time that none of us know is daunting.
So what exactly is loneliness?
I'm glad you asked that because I think people use the terms social isolation and loneliness interchangeably, and they are very related and can often coexist.
This is Julianne Holt-Lundstad, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah. Like me and the rest of the country, Julianne is also in isolation.
Correct, yes. Working from home, as is my husband and 2 teenage boys whose schools are also closed.
Julianne says loneliness is not so much about being alone as it is about feeling alone.
So it's often defined as that discrepancy between one's actual and desired level of social connection.
And while it might seem difficult to measure the prevalence of a feeling,
we're not measuring loneliness in the census, right?
Well before the coronavirus, we as a society have been feeling lonelier than ever.
We do have several nationally representative surveys that do suggest a significant portion of the population is affected by this.
This is a problem.
We benchmarked that relative to other kinds of risk factors for mortality that we take very seriously. And what we found was that the magnitude of that effect exceeded that of obesity, physical inactivity, and air pollution.
Taken another way, you can literally die from loneliness.
So these are things that we need to take quite seriously for our health.
But it turns out, while social isolation can often lead to loneliness, it doesn't always work out that way.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Great.
The voice on the other end of the call is Justine Etzkorn, principal Lighthouse Keeper at the Carmana Point Lighthouse on Vancouver Island in British Columbia. There aren't many people more isolated than Justine. In fact, Justine is so isolated that her internet connection couldn't even handle a video call, hence why we're on the phone.
So we're 30 kilometers from the nearest town. I don't know what that is in miles.
It's over 18 and a half.
It would be a couple days walk, and then you'd have to get across the river. So we get in and out by air. The Coast Guard has helicopters, so a couple of times a year we'll go in and out.
Justine's parents were lightkeepers, and so she comes to lightkeeping naturally.
So I grew up not only out here, but literally here.
Mm-hmm.
Like the house I'm in has Justine was this tall, age 10 written on the wall.
Yet despite living a solitary life, Justine says she doesn't feel lonely.
Other than me, the other lightkeeper, my wife, and my cat, there are no other humans within a 30-kilometer radius, other than the boats in the strait, I guess. And I don't feel isolated out here.
In fact, Justine says the only time she ever really felt alone was living among other people.
I was probably, especially my first few years in town, a lot more lonely in town because I didn't have a lot of connections and, probably didn't have as many social skills as I might have had. So I felt very isolated when I was living in town because I was surrounded by people I didn't know and didn't know how to get to know.
Which suggests loneliness is not so much about missing people as it is about missing connection.
The difference to me between isolation and loneliness is that you can feel loneliness with or without this forced isolation. I don't think that my loneliness is any worse. I just think that maybe I have more time to think about it. And so, it can feel a bit more daunting, a bit more overwhelming. But you could be in a relationship and feel lonely. You don't have to be alone to feel that way.
And so maybe in this moment when we're all isolated in our own little lighthouses, whether they be in Brooklyn or Utah or British Columbia, maybe we can all try a little harder to spread light to one another.
It's interesting to think about how we're all isolating in one way or another, but also we feel so connected. I do like this idea that we're all going through this together. And I think that if we're smart and we lean into it and we look for the ways to connect with each other, actually some good things can come out of this. I think it could actually be, it could help reset our culture in a lot of really huge and meaningful ways.
On that note, Justine.
What's the weather like right now?
It's nice, yeah. Sunny. It's light wind out of the south. A bit of a sea swell from offshore, but yeah, it's a good day.